She looked me dead in the eyes, in front of her assistant, in front of the receptionist who could hear everything through the open door, and said, "You're lying. People like you always say they floss. You don't floss." Not a question, a statement, said with that particular kind of smile that powerful people use when they want to humiliate you and keep their hands clean at the same time. I sat there, paper bib clipped around my neck, mouth still open, completely exposed, and I made a decision. She had no idea what was coming. If you've ever been talked down to by someone who thought their title made them untouchable, a boss, a doctor, a teacher, anyone who used their authority to make you feel small, then this one's for you. Hit that like button, subscribe if you're new, and buckle up. Because this is the story of how one dentist's God complex became the worst professional mistake of her career. Let me take you back about 8 months. I'd just moved to a new city. New job, new apartment, new everything. And like any responsible adult trying to get their life together, I went through the checklist. New GP, new gym, new dentist. A coworker, someone I trusted at the time, recommended a dental practice downtown. Said the dentist, Dr. Hargrove, was thorough. Said she didn't sugarcoat things. I thought that sounded great. I wanted honesty. I wanted a professional. I did not want what I got. The waiting room should have been my first warning. Everything about it was designed to make you feel like a patient in the most clinical, dehumanizing sense of the word. No music. Fluorescent lights that buzzed just loud enough to be annoying. A receptionist who didn't look up when I walked in. Just slid a clipboard across the counter without a word. I filled out my forms, sat down, waited 25 minutes past my appointment time. When I finally got called back, Dr. Hargrove walked in like she was doing me a favor by existing in the same room as me. Late 40s, sharp bob haircut, the kind of reading glasses she wore on the end of her nose specifically so she could look over them at you. You know the type. Every word she said carried this invisible footnote. I'm the expert here. You're just the mouth. She started the exam. Standard stuff. Poking around, checking my gums, doing that thing where they call out numbers to the assistant and you have no idea if a 4 is good or terrible. Then she stopped. Sat back on her little rolling stool. Crossed her arms. And said, "Tell me about your flossing routine." Now here's the thing. I'm not a perfect flosser. I never claim to be. I do it a few times a week, sometimes every day if I'm on a good streak. Sometimes I miss a couple days. That's just the truth. Most people are exactly the same way. And if you're sitting there nodding right now, you know exactly what I mean. So I told her, honestly, a few times a week. Not every day, but I try to be consistent. She made a sound. Not quite a laugh, more like a scoff dressed up as a hum, and then she said it. "You're lying. People like you always say they floss. You don't floss." I blinked. People like you. I asked her what she meant by that. She waved her hand like the question was beneath her. "I can tell by your gum tissue. You haven't been flossing regularly for months, if ever. It's fine. Just be honest with me so I can treat you properly. There's no point in lying to your dentist." The assistant didn't say anything, but I caught her eyes flick up for just a second before she looked back down at her clipboard. I felt my face go hot. That particular heat that starts at the back of your neck and creeps forward. The heat of being publicly accused of something, of being reduced to a type, of being talked to like you're a child who got caught in a lie. And here's the thing about that feeling. Most people swallow it. Most people apologize. Most people say, "Okay, you're right, sorry," just to make the discomfort stop. I almost did. Almost. Instead, I calmly said, "I'm not lying. I told you exactly what I do." She gave me that smile again. Condescending. Patient in the way a person is patient when they've already decided they're right and they're just waiting for you to catch up. "Okay," she said, and moved on like the conversation was over. The rest of the appointment was fine, technically. No cavities. A few recommendations. She handed me a sample floss at the end with this pointed little look that said everything she didn't bother to say out loud. I drove home absolutely seething. Not because she challenged me, not because she told me my gums could be healthier. I can take constructive feedback. I'm an adult. What I couldn't take was the certainty, the dismissal, the people like you, the complete unwillingness to believe that I might actually be telling the truth. I looked her up that night. Reviews, professional history, any information I could find. And that's when things got interesting. Dr. Hargrove had a 4-star rating overall, but when I sorted by lowest reviews, which is always where the truth lives, a pattern emerged. Comment after comment from patients saying they felt talked down to, felt dismissed, felt like they were being called liars or being accused of not caring for themselves. One woman wrote, "She told me I was definitely not brushing twice a day based on nothing. I brush 3 times a day. I left in tears." She hadn't responded to a single negative review. I kept digging. Turns out she was also listed as a provider on 3 different insurance networks, and 2 of those networks had a patient feedback portal that most people didn't know existed. Not a public review site, an internal feedback system that went directly to the network's provider quality team. I knew what I needed to do. Over the next 2 weeks, I did 3 things. First, I documented everything I could remember from the appointment. The exact words she used, the tone, the timing, the assistant who was present. I wrote it all out in a detailed, professional, completely factual account. No exaggeration, no emotion, just, this is what happened, this is what was said, this is how it made me feel as a patient. Second, I reached out, carefully and privately, to 2 of the reviewers who had left similar complaints. I didn't ask them to do anything. I just shared my experience and mentioned that the insurance network had an internal feedback portal. What they chose to do with that information was entirely up to them. Third, I submitted my own feedback to both insurance networks. Not a rant, not an attack, a calm, thorough, professional account of a patient who was called a liar by their provider during a routine cleaning with no clinical basis for that accusation in front of office staff. And then I waited. I went back to my regular life. New job, new gym, new dentist, because I found a different practice that actually treated me like a person. Weeks passed. I almost forgot about it. Then, about 6 weeks later, I got an email from one of the insurance networks confirming they had reviewed my feedback and taken appropriate action with the provider. Standard language. Tells you nothing specific. But 2 days after that email, I got a Google notification. Dr. Hargrove's practice had responded to every single negative review on her profile. Every single one. Responses that were clearly written in a panic, over-apologetic, slightly incoherent, promising retraining and improved patient communication. And then, the week after that, I heard from one of the reviewers I'd reached out to. She told me she'd submitted her own feedback to the insurance network and had received a call from the provider quality team asking her detailed questions about her experience. The practice's rating dropped. New negative reviews started appearing. People who'd apparently been holding back suddenly felt permission to speak. And last month, Dr. Hargrove's practice was dropped from one of the insurance networks entirely. I want to be clear. I didn't set out to destroy her practice. I set out to be heard. But there's something quietly, deeply satisfying about watching a system work the way it's supposed to. About realizing that the person who made you feel small and stupid and dishonest in a paper bib in a fluorescent room on a Tuesday afternoon, that person had a file now, had a record, had consequences. I imagined her seeing those insurance network emails. Imagine that moment her confidence cracked, just slightly, when she realized that dismissing patients doesn't just disappear into the exam room, that people like me keep receipts. She called me a liar. And I'd responded by telling nothing but the truth to every person with the authority to do something about it. That's not revenge. That's accountability. And the difference is everything. Here's what I think about when I look back on this. She had all the power in that room, the credentials, the tools, the authority, and she used it to make someone feel like less than nothing over something as small as flossing. Power used carelessly has a way of finding its way back. And sometimes, the most devastating thing you can do to someone who lies about who you are is simply, quietly, tell the truth. If this story hit differently for you, if you've ever been dismissed, talked over, or flat out called a liar by someone who thought their position protected them, smash that like button and drop it in the comments. I read every single one. And tell me, what's the most satisfying moment of accountability you've ever witnessed or been a part of? Subscribe for more stories like this. New ones every week. And hey, floss your teeth. Sometimes